Hello and welcome to Literary as Feck. I'm here in the reading boudoir with my friend and chum, Clive. Introduce yourself, Clive,
I'm
or did I just introduce you?
Yeah, I think you did. You are
I think
looking
I did. And I'm Nick.
you are looking suitably Floridian there as well.
That
Nick.
that was part of the idea. Yes, I do have the seascape behind me, and I am wearing the shirt. So yes, we are going to talk about a book called Skin Tight by Floridian author Carl HIAASEN.
Not how
Uh,
it's pronounced.
and I think so. Actually, I've
Okay.
got no idea. Sure.
Okay.
Let's say that that's how it's pronounced.
I was pronouncing it
Um,
Carl HIAASEN, but yours
could well
seems
be.
to make more sense.
Um, so I think I first heard about Carl from my friend Tavis, who I recently realized that we recorded something about the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers recently,
Hmm.
and I totally, when you asked me how I discovered the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, I blanked and did not realize it was certainly had been Tavis who would have lent me Wonder Warthog first, and then made me aware of
Uh-huh.
Freak Brothers as well. Tavis, my friends Tavis and Paul, in many ways, I would be an uncultured boob were it not for those guys constantly introducing me to all kinds of stuff that became important to me, movies, music, and books. But in any case, we were driving around once, and I don't know. It's probably before I even read any Jim Thompson or stuff. And Tavis said to me, "Have you ever heard of Carl HIAASEN or read any of his stuff?" And I was like, "Nope." And he described one or two of the books, and yeah, I was suitably piqued my curiosity, and so Skin Tight was one of the ones I would have read. So I haven't read this in 25 years, so it was a quite a long time, and I haven't read any Carl HIAASEN in a long, long time. I read a bunch of them back then, but then
Okay.
I haven't kept up necessarily what he's done since.
I wasn't familiar.
So
I hadn't read. And I'm kind of curious, did you choose Skin Tight um above and beyond any of the others that you read because you remembered it as being one of the best, or did that not?
I remembered, I definitely remembered enjoying it. Although it's funny, upon rereading it, I partially have mixed it up with another book. I did remember all of the stuff around the the plastic surgery industry,
Mm,
but I thought that the kind of sketchy. There's a there is a HIAASEN formula, but it's
right.
his formula. Like, he invented it, but he tends to then apply it to most of his books. And there's almost always a hideously disfigured um, villain character who gets more and more disfigured as the story goes on.
Mm,
And I have mistaken. There's another book where there's almost a kind of a Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia thing going on. Where, yeah, and I had thought that that was the villain of this book, and so I had forgotten that Chemo was the big bad guy in this one. But
right.
yeah, I remembered enjoying it. I may have enjoyed it more back then than I enjoyed it this time, but after I kind of got into it, it breezed along. But it was harder to get into this time for whatever reason.
Yes.
I didn't take to it right.
Yes. It strikes me as a book that I think I would have enjoyed a lot more had I, yes, read it back in like the 90s or something.
Yeah,
And now, like you said, one of the reasons being, then you would have been coming from it from a point of view of not being familiar with people like Jim Thompson or Charles Willeford, or people
yeah.
who did some of the some of the same kind of stuff, but in about a quarter of the page count. I think
Yes,
was the
yes,
big
yeah.
takeaway from me for this was this is a bit long-winded for what this is. Was the
Hmm.
main again, like you, I enjoyed it, but it does go on a bit. Um,
Yeah, and they're a little bit broader than I remember them as well. Like like the so I mean, maybe we'll just very quickly give a potted version of what
yeah,
the
go
story is
on,
all
do
about.
the plot then.
Yeah. So basically, the main character of our story is a guy called Mick Stranahan, who is a retired detective down in Florida, He's been turfed out of his job because he has shot a crooked judge, basically, and he's a guy who basically seems to kill people quickly. Usually, there's a setup where he's always in the right. It was always the right thing to do, but he's killed like 5 people at this point already. And it turns out that there's a plastic surgeon in Florida who is, incredibly bad at his job. So that's one of the things that I like about the book is that, and even this time, it didn't grind to a halt to give me the backstory stuff about how screwed up the medical system is with regards to this, in the way that maybe Miyuki Miyabe's book, when it would stop and somebody would lecture me for 7 pages about financial stuff. This one, it seemed like it was woven into the story well enough, but you still were like you really don't need any actual specialization. You just need to say in the US that, oh yes, I'm a plastic surgeon, and then you can go ahead and kind of.
I was wondering about that stuff as well, how true, and I think a lot of that stuff probably was true then, but not necessarily now. I think the industry has probably been massively,
hopefully tightened up a bit.
Yeah.
So there's a guy, and this is one of these broad things, like, so like a lot of the plastic surgeons have kind of ridiculous names, like, well, Dr. Graveline, right, is our, which I was initially pronouncing Gravelin, but I suspect it's probably Graveline. Is our lead kind of bad guy. So I mentioned before to Clive that I have a headache today, and so putting words together is not going to be as easy as it normally is for me. So if I'm stumbling, please bear with me.
Also, you're having slight
so I think there's a Dr. Dicer in there as well.
Yeah, you're having slight tech issues as well, right? Which I don't think will be evident.
My brain implant is there's something wrong with it, and I don't have full access to my vocabulary tonight.
Right, your tinfoil hat is picking up signals.
Yes. There's Radio Free Luxembourg is playing on one of my back fillings.
Is that? But is there still a Radio Free Luxembourg?
I have no idea.
If you know, if you're a DJ on Radio Free Luxembourg, put us on the air, and also write in.
Send me a message to my
next.
So Dr. Graveline has accidentally killed a girl by deviating her septum while giving her a nose job a few years before the book takes place. It was hushed up. The girl was spirited away and disappeared. And basically, this is an unsolved case connected to our main character, Mick Stranahan, and somebody involved in the cover-up, a nurse, has decided to try to leverage some money out of the doctor. Right? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah.
So she has gone to a hard copy kind of. There's a very clear Geraldo Rivera character in this called Ronaldo Flem,
which is a good name.
Yes, very, very broadly drawn caricature, but at the same time, probably not that far off what people like that are like.
I was definitely picturing Geraldo Rivera all the way through.
Yes, I am sure that was very much intended. So she has gone and basically made a deal that she's going to out this plastic surgeon on TV. But then, does she go to the plastic? Like, how does the plastic surgeon find out? That's what I'm having trouble remembering now. But somehow he finds out.
That stuff. I think it's because I can't remember.
I don't know that it really matters. All that matters is that somehow she implicates Mick, and Mick is this, as I said, this big, scary ex-cop who lives out in that awesome part of Florida where all the houses on stilts, Stiltsville. Okay, and it is a real place.
Yeah,
it shows up in episodes of Miami Vice and various other movies shot in and around Florida.
Slightly similar to that. I can forget what it's called now, but there's a famous area as well, like in New Orleans as well, isn't there? Like where there's a community of houses on stilts, which amazingly seems to have often survived some of the hurricanes that come through. those houses are
Right.
sturdier than you might think.
I love houses on stilts. That's one of those things. Like there's certain things, gazebos. I love a good gazebo. I am a huge fan of a house on stilts.
That's not an euphemism, by the way, listeners.
No.
I always thought gazebo sounds a little bit naughty. I don't know why. Like it's, you know, yeah. Oh, that was a good
I can see
gazebo. That. You give a hell of a gazebo.
I'm just picturing Graham Chapman's, you know, like erogenous zones. Just delivering gazebo.
Also, yeah, I remember once being on holiday in the Philippines and staying at like a water cottage, you know, which is just basically a little hotel room on stilts, you know, out. And yeah, there's nothing better than kind of falling asleep to the sound of lapping water beneath you. It's great.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It should mention as well the character Stranahan, he's in very much that kind of mode of there's kind of a precedent, isn't there, for kind of former police stroke private investigators who just want to get away from civilization, who like live on a houseboat or on a house on stilts or something like that. And you know, they're always like impressively manly and stripped down, and the heroines always you know, fall for their pragmatic and, you know, macho, but not, you know, not in a toxic way, just like in a very competent, damn that man, down to earth kind of.
And he looks great in those tiny cut-off shorts he wears.
And he knows how to, you know, change at the very least, he knows how to change a fuse. But also, he also has a good use of all automatic weapons and boats, and has a working knowledge of, you know, coasts and shorelines and migratory habits and barracudas, and you know, even though he does fuck all except sleep on the roof of his house all day, as far as I could tell. Like, I don't know when he picked up these skills, but goddamn, he's a man and a half, isn't he? This Mick Stranahan.
Mick is he's a beefy hunk of
I
masculinity for sure.
The end point in today's like pop culture environment, in terms of like the most recent iteration of this, which is like really, you know, bestseller stuff, is the and now that I've bigged it up, I've forgotten the name. What's that series of books with like the guy who travels around and turns up in different towns, and he's like Jack Reacher, right? It's Jack Reacher's like the ultimate that kind of character, I suppose, that he's always trying to get away from, you know, pesky society, and is always forced to be all manly and clever and shit.
Because he's getting dragged back into other people's messes that he's got to deal with.
Right.
So in this case, he gets dragged into this mess, and a succession of hitmen attempt to kill him because this doctor believes that Mick Stranahan knows that he is, you know, responsible for this girl dying. And one of those hitmen is this weird lanky guy who was in an Amish community, who's had a hideous plastic surgery botched job, which has made him look like like his face is kind of covered in prickles and bumps, basically, right? This character's name's Chemo, and at one point his hand gets eaten off by a barracuda, and then he attaches a weed whacker to it. So that's that weird over the top thing that tends to happen in a Carl Hiaasen book. There's always one thing you're just like, what?
I tell you what it reminded me a little bit of, which we've spoken about before, but crucially not the book version, because that book version was so kind of terse and quickly, you know, written out in and this is more verbose. The film version of Perdita Durango had a similar kind of tone, very cartoonish, kind of slightly ghoulish, nightmarish things happen now and again, like when a liposuction thing goes wrong. That scene's quite,
Yes.
that's one of the better
Yeah.
bits of the book. I think I enjoyed that. I can imagine. I was thinking, oh yeah, I think this is one of the bits Nick's remembering, and why he's gone back to this, right?
Yes, yeah. And I do like I like things set in Florida.
Yes.
I mean, as we know, I mean, Charles Willeford is a better Floridian,
sure.
crime writer for sure. But still, I will always happily go back. And so apparently, because these books were written in the 80s and in the kind of the early 90s, a lot of people will visit Florida, like the whole idea of Florida Man, right? I mean, I'm sure you're well aware of the memes, right?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So if you Google Florida Man and any given date, you will get an outrageous newspaper story. It doesn't matter. Well, for example, my own birthday, 26th of May.
Send your presents now.
Florida man arrested for attacking daughter with pizza. That was in 2021, and then in 2018. So there's apparently my birthday is celebrated in Florida by attacking your family members with Italian food, because in 2018 on the May 26th, Florida man attacked mom with spaghetti because demons were in his head. I think
so. It's a very So what you're trying to say is Florida seems to be a hotbed of clickbait tabloid crimes.
I think that yes, and I think that the kinds of crimes that happen in Florida, I mean, it's regularly things like Florida man throws alligator through window of Burger King, or like drive through Burger King, right? Yeah, they're always like, what? Florida man masturbates into boot in Walmart, while attacking Granny or whatever. Like,
but this guy gets around.
That's the thing. So that's the joke is that it's one guy, right?
Yeah, like a superhero with an F on his.
Yeah. Florida man. Yes. So your own birthday was not as exciting. Florida man sentenced to 20 years for uploading bomb-making video.
Okay.
I'm
imagining Florida man as well as. Have you ever seen that movie Zart? Or is it also known as The Blood Waters of Dr. Zed?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's a very Florida man, because if I remember, that's an interesting film. It's the scientist who turns himself into a human catfish, right? But not by accident. Like,
monster.
That is the object of the experiment.
He has to winch himself.
He
has to winch himself down.
I love those scenes in that film.
A big hypodermic needle.
Florida man turns himself into a huge catfish deliberately.
Yeah.
And we should also
mention, I think, remember,
the two guys who do the Paperback Warrior podcast as well. They're based in Florida, and they often bring it up. It's amazing, actually, how many crime writers are either out of Florida or often relocated to Florida. Like they're from other places.
Yeah.
When they settle down.
I think Elmore Leonard.
Yeah.
Elmore Leonard spent quite a bit of there. John D. McDonald, I think, spent a lot of time there. It was
like a little writing group, like Willeford and John McDonald and some other people used to hang out and have like barbecues and things, and which sound awesome. Can you imagine hanging out?
Yeah, totally awesome. And I do think that there was a little bit of that they did appreciate that HIAASEN was kind of continuing, although in a more cartoony way, maybe,
right?
But still trying to kind of bring that Florida weird to the world.
I can imagine Charles Willeford there at the grill, and someone's like trying to, I don't know, having problems with the story, and is asking, about write themselves out of a corner or something. But Charles Willeford is just there banging on about hats or something.
Yes, exactly. Oh man, his autobiography. I need to get the second volume of that desperately.
Well, if you do,
we read one volume.
If you do it, we'll do it on here, because I think there's a Kindle of that. Is it the one I'm Looking for a Street? Right, that one. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah.
I think there's a very affordable.
Okay.
Kindle. So
because I've read I've read one of the 2 volumes of his autobiography, and it was amazing.
That's the one.
Um,
That's the one with the cockfighting in the Philippines and stuff like that, right?
yes,
His
yes, yeah,
service. Yeah, I think I read. I think you lent me that. So yeah, let's do the
yes,
other
yeah.
one on here then, because I'm
Okay, agreed.
maybe
Okay.
pair it up with one of his books or something.
Yes, so I actually have just ordered one from a Hard Case Crime. They put one back into print that hasn't been in print for a long, long time.
Is that the one you wanted to do actually next?
Yes.
Yes, I
Yeah,
ordered
yeah.
it as well,
So
but mine's taken a while to get here for some reason.
So is mine.
Ah,
I did get Brainquake by Sam Fuller though, so
Okay.
that's something else to
Uh-huh.
kick down a bit further down the road. But anyway, I mean, I don't know that there's much else to say except that it's fun. It's not
It's fun.
absolutely amazing,
No.
but it's a good book to take to the beach in the summer. It's got lots of action. It's got a little bit of sex, and it's got a ridiculous, over the top villain or set of villains, right? And
How popular were his books like back in the day? Like, are we talking? Was he on like bestseller lists or?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay, because I was going to
Yeah.
say he does seem to come at that intersection, as we've kind of danced around of, there was a lot of this stuff out there for decades and decades and decades, and then at this point it kind of crosses over into that, like you said, beach read market.
Yeah.
And unnecessarily part of the transformation is we need to boost the page count a bit, right? So people feel like they're getting their money back, taking a book to the beach. So it's kind of like that. A slightly bloated version of a lot of those authors we just mentioned, right? But not cripplingly so. I want to point that out. Like,
No.
I feel it's, on the one hand, definitely worth mentioning that it's too long, but on the other hand, it's also worth reiterating that it's not, it's still
a hard read.
No.
Yeah, it's never a slog. The characters are enjoyably, all over the place. And and as I said, there is, if you did enjoy it, then his other books are sort of similar. I think Tourist Season is one of the other ones that's more highly considered.
Okay.
He did write Striptease, which was adapted into a movie starring Demi Moore, which is apparently one of the worst films ever made. I don't think I've ever seen it.
I have seen it, but I don't.
Although most people say that Ving Rhames and Burt Reynolds are both good in it, but that Demi Moore apparently seemed to be in a different movie. Apparently everyone else understood what they were doing, that they were doing a Carl HIAASEN cartoon basically, and then she turned into like a super serious, like struggling young, mother becomes hooker kind of, or like not hooker, but like their exotic dancer, and it just doesn't gel at all with the rest of the thing. I haven't.
She brought a bit too much Meryl Streep to the Tarantino party.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I was wondering about that actually. So similarly, there's the other ones are similar in tone and also in length.
Yeah, some of the earlier ones may be slightly slimmer, but they're never going to be like 150 page, Williford or
on the one hand, you're saying if I enjoyed this, I would also potentially enjoy the other ones. But then on the other hand, the next question, I suppose the slightly similar version of that question is it also a question of read one, read them all? I'm wondering.
You could make that. I mean, as you might want to look up, and again, I can't speak to the entire body of his work because I haven't read many books since back then.
Right.
But at a certain point, when I had read 4 of them, I definitely felt like, okay, I can see that there's a very clear pattern emerging there. And then I was like, I don't. But then he did shake things up. He started to write kids' books. He wrote a couple of kids' books, all with a kind of an eco theme as well. And one of them was made into a movie. I think it was called Hoot. But yeah, so I mean, but I don't know how much he's shaken up what he was doing. I haven't read, as I said.
Right.
Can't tell you.
Do you think you'll go back and reread those other ones?
I suspect I'll read the one. I think I'll read the other one that I thought. I think the other one that I'd mashed up with this book. I'm going to figure out which one that is. Where there's a character who, as I said, ends up. I think he ends up getting bitten on the arm by like a dog, and it gets like lockjaw, and he has to saw its head off. But then it's still attached to his arm for the rest of the story, and his arm is slowly going gangrenous, and he starts to then talk to the head of the dog and develop this relationship with it. Wow. And I remember enjoying that whole thing.
That sounds like a bit of a weird kind of Alfredo Garcia stroke Hulk Mosley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the one that I probably, as I said, that's the one I thought we were reading. And so that may actually be my favorite one. But Skin Tight was up there too. So, I mean, if you hated Skin Tight, you're definitely not going to enjoy any of the other ones.
Right.
You know. But yeah. But I'll look up which one that is, and I'll let you know, because that one's fun too.
Okay. Yeah. So
I think that's what I was saying.
Yeah, that's us for this time, I guess.
Thank you for joining us in the bedroom and office of your literary as Feck hosts.
Nick has
Nothing else to say.
Nick has a headache.
Yeah, I do. He does have a headache.
He says he in the third person. See you.
Yes.